if there are additional questions, sometimes we finish early, but just to let you know. So great. So again, let's get started. My name is Jodi Hammer, and I am the Career Services Specialist here in the Office of Global Reentry here at NPCA, National Peace Corps Association. Very happy to be with you today to talk about tools for creative career decision making. I am also an RPCV, having served in Ecuador from 94 through 97. And I formerly worked with Peace Corps headquarters in the Career Center, so managing that. So I'm thrilled to be in my new capacity here at NPCA, helping you, the RPCVs, with your job search, that type of thing. Not only in doing these kinds of workshops, but also providing some of the individual assistance, and shoot me a message if you have questions, things like that. You can always reach out as well, which we'll share a little bit later as well, the address. So today we're going to talk, as I said, about creative career decision making. And this is a concept, a lot of people think of, they put a lot of pressure on themselves about career decision making, like, what do I want to do with my life? And I have a slide actually on this I'll even be sharing a little bit in a few minutes. But career decision making is something that's going to be likely a part of your lives, oftentimes throughout your life. It's not that you just do it once, and oftentimes it's not doing it just once and being in that same career for the rest of your life. So we're going to talk a little bit about whether you're just starting out. Maybe Peace Corps was your first quote unquote real job, other than internships, things like that, which are also important and should certainly be put on your application materials. But or if you're somebody who maybe did Peace Corps mid-career, or maybe you did Peace Corps some time ago and you're now thinking about, what do you want to do in this next stage of your life? You're just, maybe your soul is just you're kind of feeling you need a change, and there's nothing wrong with that. So we're going to be talking about that, and I'm excited to have you here with me. I want to show you first more of a traditional model, of career decision making, right? And the arrows going both ways as well is very indicative of, this isn't something that's just step 1, step 2, step 3, and you just work through it and that's your solution, right? It's something that involves all of these different areas that are listed on this little, this graphic here. Assessing your interests, your skills, attributes, values, things like that. And that's where we're going to focus a lot on today, is more of what are some of those tools to help you assess your interests, your skills, what you're good at, what you value, why that's important. So we're going to talk more on that aspect, but definitely there's the research, the fields of interest, and I'll be talking very briefly on that and pointing you to a great resource on that as well, and how you can do that in different ways. Some of the graphics we have incorporate some of that as well. And then focusing on your career goals, obviously through the experiences that you gain, keeping sight of what your career goals are and or how they change, and they will, if you are anything like the typical person these days, the job worker, going through life. Many times your interests and such change, and over the course of your life, and you have the opportunity to explore many different fields and careers even. So that's exciting. And then of course, the other one here showing is, taking action, launching your job search, right? And that's something that is a huge deal. And that's where a lot of our webinars traditionally focus is, okay, you're doing your job search. How can you write your resume in the best way that will get noticed? How can you prepare for those difficult interview questions? All of that direct career search, job search related things. So I'm excited to talk to you more today a little bit about kind of an area that is so important, the career decision making. What are the tools that can help make it easier? Because it can feel very daunting, right? So let's get started. And as I said, for some people, they're starting out right out of maybe college, and they went to Peace Corps, and then they're looking for, what do they want to do in their life. For many others, it's more of a how to successfully change your career, right? So it's and there's a whole, you already have work experience, right? And you've done some different things, and you're either maybe getting bored with what you are doing, or you're just finding it's not really feeding my soul. It may be feeding myself, you know, brings home the bacon and, you know, provides for, you know, rent or mortgage or whatever, that kind of thing. But it's not something that's feeding your soul as much. And that's where we get into kind of, you know, how can you find, sometimes you know what you want to do instead. Oh, I know this is my passion. I want to work in this. And that's great. So you can go directly into how can you find out, you know, consider those alternative careers, right? Talking to people, you know, this graphic is showing like, you know, pets or cats, animals, that kind of thing. Maybe this person is an animal lover and they're doing a desk job now that's not at all related. And they're kind of daydreaming or thinking about, what do I want to do? What, you know, what's my passion? And so looking at some of those alternative careers, and I'm going to share with you some resources on very good resources, including some put out by, you know, DOL and Department of Labor, that is, and Bureau of Labor Stats, and, you know, on different careers and the titles and what does it mean and advantages, disadvantages, things like that, that can be really helpful as you're doing your search. But obviously, you're going to do more than looking online when you're thinking about changing your career, right? You need to reach out for informational interviews. So again, when we're spending time today on some of those values and identifying your values and your you know, your areas of interest and you know, jobs that would fit well with your, whether it's personality, inventory kind of things, to see what would go along, what you would do well in. Once you identify some of those areas, then you really want to get information on those areas. And certainly you look online, but you also should really be doing some of the career, you know, the career chats, as I call them, instead of informational interviews. But you can connect with people in a variety of ways, right? If you have, you know, friends who have friends who are working in that career and would certainly be willing to speak with you, but also, you know, mining your own contacts and using LinkedIn, you know, and doing that people search where, you know, you go to the search bar and you know, show all filters and you put in former employer, people who formerly worked at, you know, Peace Corps. You're going to put in just Peace Corps. That's going to give you people who are, you know, we're volunteers, so RPCVs, you know what, we're 220,000 strong. I mean, there's a lot of RPCVs out there. And or people who worked at the agency and maybe weren't Peace Corps volunteers, but worked at the agency, who, you know, and then currently work for the current employer. You'd put in whatever that, or sector, or whatever it is, put in, you know, that into the current employer, and that then boom, it shows you people who meet that criteria. And chances are, as you build your network, right, on LinkedIn, you'll get more and more people in that way as well, and you can reach out to them and, you know, simply say, hey, it's great to meet I'm a fellow RPCV having served in da 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 da. Doesn't matter how long ago it was that you served, right? This is like a lifetime. Peace Corps is forever, right? And we are a family. So people tend to be pretty open to connecting with other RPCVs, right? Don't use the generic, you know, I'd like to add you to my professional network. And I'm not going to go into this too much longer, only because of our limited time here and the real focus of ours. But I'm going to steer you to the LinkedIn. Dr. Rhonda Anstead is one of our consultants. She's done a lot of really good career webinars on LinkedIn. I've done one, but on how to use it and how to use it in the job search. So I can write down to try to remember to add that to the resources email that I send to all of you to follow up on this email. So that can you can look at that separately. Spend time job shadowing. Like, job shadowing is a great opportunity, right? And it's an opportunity to see people in action and really kind of get more of a sense of a day in the life. So as that's possible, obviously right now in our COVID-19 you know, area, reality, whatever you want to call it, that's, you know, virtually is not quite as helpful, but at some point that can be helpful. And of course, volunteering in the field, you know, there's a resource called volunteermatch.org. That is, regardless of where you live in the States, you put in your like zip code, you put in your key area interest. So in this case, you might put animal welfare or whatever, and then it spits out nonprofits in that area that are always looking for volunteers. And I know you're looking for a real, you know, paid job, but volunteering in the field, you could get good ideas of people to interview for, you know, career chats. Volunteering can also be a great way to get your foot in the door. Even if it's a very limited amount of time, they see you in action. And when they do have opportunities, it's like, oh, well, you know, Susan was wonderful in her, you know, volunteer. I wonder if she'd be interested. So it can be great in a lot of ways. And And then of course, you know, for certain things you might want to, if you determine that you have an interest in a certain area, you might need to take some training, you know, maybe going back to school or at least getting a certification, things like that. So that's more when you're changing your career, right? So just wanted to go through that great graphic. I really like this one. And again, it's from the Balanced Career, which is a really good source that I've spotlighted in the past in our newsletters. So I promised that we'd be doing some kind of fun type of activities, or at least one to try to work in the course of this. So right now, I'm going to ask all of you to grab yourself a blank piece of paper, front and back, so you can't use the recycled paper that I know I often do. Just grab a piece of paper, notebook paper. And in this activity, and there's multiple steps, I am going to ask you to, if you can, once you get that piece of paper there, you're going to just fold that paper in half, like from the, if you're looking at it like the regular portrait style, you can just fold it from the top to the bottom in half, and then just fold it in half the other way, half the other, just keep folding it until you have, it should be 5 times that you fold it, and it should give you 32 equal size squares, ideally, but it should give you 32 squares. So fold it in half. I should do this on my end here as well, just to double check, but you fold it in half once, and then flip it the other side. Yep, twice, 3, and make good creases on each of those folds. 4, and it might be only 4 to get the 32. Let me see. Here. Nope, it's 5. Yep. So you should have 32 squares. Okay. I'm going to pull up my chat box in case people have some questions right on this or anything. But once you get that, you're just going to take a few minutes, and you're going to, on each of those squares that you've now created, you're just going to write like something that you want to do or hope to accomplish before you die, by the end of your life. Right? So it could be, I gave a few distinct examples. It could be something like go skydiving. It could be something like get a master's degree. It could be have a family, whatever. It's not just career related. We're talking just overall what you want to do in your life, like things that experiences you want to have, or accomplishments, right? Or milestones, some people think of it as. But you just write one in each of those squares. So I'm going to give you probably about maybe 5 minutes to do this. And don't stress if you don't come up with all 32. It will work with just, if it's 16 or whatever, just do as many as you can during the time that I'm going to give you. And I'm going to just set a timer here for 5 minutes, okay? I'll occasionally break in case folks are joining us midstream, to let them know what we're doing. And folks are just following these instructions here, just taking a piece of plain paper, folding it in half, and then again, and again, and again, creasing the sides really well with each of those folds until you end with 32 squares. The actual number of squares is not as important for this demonstration here, but fill in then as many of those squares as you can with something, one item or thing, accomplishment, what have you, you want to experience before or by the end of your life, let's say.
I had a quick question.
Sure.
Can it be a habit I would like to integrate into my life?
Yes, sure. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, we have about 1 minute left. Okay, great. I hope folks have been able to get as many as possible on that, but again, it doesn't matter if you didn't get to the full 32. This was part one of the instructions, right? So now what we're going to do is we're going to have you, I'm going to actually go to the next one, which is the instructions part two. I'm going to have you now look at each of the items you wrote in the square, right? The word or words written, you know, in each square. And on the back side of that square, you're going to write the first word or concept that comes to mind, right? How does that speak to you? Like what, and I'll give you the example. For skydiving, it might be adventure. Um, for family, you know, if it was, you know, if it was have a child, you know, that on the back might be, you know, family or connection, something like that. Just, I hope that makes sense. Don't worry, or it might be for the one that we said, you know, get a master's degree, you know, that might be competence or education or whatever. Just write why it speaks to you, just in as close to one word as possible, right? And don't worry about if you have several that speak to the same thing. It's absolutely fine to have multiple words. This is not like an essay that you're writing where you have to think of synonyms so you don't sound repetitive. This is absolutely fine to have repetitions in things, okay? So please go ahead and do that at this point for as many as you were able to think of. And I'll set my timer again, and then we'll come back and talk a little more about that. And if you do have questions, you can throw it in the chat box. I am here looking, but you can also unmute if you need to as well. So great. I feel like I should have a timer here showing on the screen so people who are entering now a little bit late, know we are in the middle of this activity. So if you are just joining us, we had quite a few come on a little bit late, and that's absolutely fine. We are continuing an activity that's a values 32 squares activity. And what people did was they folded a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper front and back, fold it in half, then fold it in half the other way and keep going in half 5 times, increasing those sides to get ultimately 32 squares. And then the first part of it, they spent putting in each box, each of those boxes that show from the creases, one item that they want to accomplish or do within their lifetime before they die. So it could be something like go skydiving or get a master's degree. So you just put as many of those things down, 1 per box. And then now we're in the step 2, where we're looking at each of those squares and the word or words that are written. And on the back side of each of those, I'm having them write the first word that comes to mind for each of those items. Like, how does that speak to you? So for example, with the skydiving, it might be adventure. For the master's degree, that might be education, or competence, or whatever it speaks to you of. And I did remind folks to not worry about using the same word multiple times. That's actually part of the purpose of this activity. We're kind of identifying some of those words that may be repeated multiple times, those concepts. So you can certainly join us to whatever extent you can, and then continue at your own leisure afterwards. We have about 1.5 minutes left. 10-second warning. Nothing like pressure. All right, so we'll come back together now. That's great, thank you. Thank you for playing with me. I love this activity, and it's one that, actually, if any of you were on the Career Happiness podcast that my dear friend and career coach, Denise Reedman Fowler, she was on the podcast with us talking about her work and career happiness. I would also point you all to that podcast, which is available via Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and I think now on, is it BuzzFeed? It's a different one. Anyway, you can find it online. If you go to one of those sites and you put in jobs for Jodi, career happiness, you'll be able to find that one. It was an excellent podcast. She was amazing. And she and I both, this is one of our favorite activities to do with clients or to promote, because it really kind of helps you sometimes get to the bottom of like what's important and such. So what I want to say is, what did you notice? What do you notice when you look at your list of your things, and then specifically those words that came up on the other side? Feel free to drop a comment into the chat box if you on things that you maybe noticed, or were there certain words that came up multiple times, or synonyms, concepts that you found repeated numerous times. If so, just drop those into the chat box and we can talk about it a little bit. And we actually have I feel like we have a small enough crew that we could even have you, unmute yourself and share if you prefer to talk versus type into the chat box. Let's see here. Did anyone? Self-improvement. Great, Gina. Yeah, absolutely. And Gina, I think you had asked earlier, I think you were the one who asked, can I put a habit, that I want to integrate into, my life? And I said, absolutely. I mean, and I think of things like meditation or something. And what's the result of that? Like, what does that really get you? How does it speak to you? Is it that it helps, keep you grounded or things like that? Like that's something that's important to you. And that can really weigh in heavily in what kind of a career would you want to have. You may not want to have one of those careers that's the very, woo, fast paced and, I think of air traffic controller or something where it's like you're always at that ultimate, speed and stress and whatever. That may not be a good fit in that case, those kind of things. So great. Thanks for sharing. Grace, yeah, keep them coming. Thank you. Grace shared adventure. Good. That's one of my big ones as well, right? Competency. Yep. Confidence. Excellent. Thanks, Grace. And Emily, yes, financial stability. That's a huge one, right? Especially coming off of an experience where, you're ultimately really not making money toward, your savings and such. Peace Corps is, a wonderful experience and all of that, but it's not exactly one that's, lucrative financially. Peace and adventure too. Nice. Very nice one. Kelly, usefulness. That's a big one that I see among RPCVs and myself included. I mean, I am someone who I want a life of service. I mean, what fulfills me much more than the dollar signs, the dollar, there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money and all of that as well. And it affords a lot of things that we want too. But to me, it's that connecting with and that helping, role, that feeds my soul, which I've learned over the many years of my, career is just as important as, the other. Certainly I have to feed myself and put money on the, put food on the table for my family and all of that. But I'm not somebody who's going to be pursuing, the extremely lucrative types of opportunities that might be less of that connection, with people and helping them and being of service. That's where my niche is, my, happy zone, my fulfillment zone. And so I know my area and that's why I love so much the job that I do now. And the job that I did with Peace Corps is, working with an amazing group of people, RPCVs, and helping them with their job search and helping them achieve, what they're hoping to achieve and, moving in that direction and all of that. So it's fun. Great. Let's see. Travel. Yes, that's another one that comes out a lot, right? Work, education. Yep. Let's see. There's a lot of really good ones that came out. Thank you. So as you look at your list and you see, it sounds like you've already seen what are the repeating ones, right, that are popping out at you, right? It's important to remember those and even record those somewhere because those are the words or concepts that are most likely among your values, your most important values. And when you're looking and thinking about career planning and career changes, career decision making, you ultimately want to find a career that is in sync with your values, right? Because if not, it's going to be a very tough road oftentimes, right? Where you're not going to maybe feel fulfilled, you're going to be feeling torn, conflicted. This is what I believe, these are my values, but I'm working for this agency that is doing exactly the opposite. Or it's just not feeding my soul in the way that I need it to. So values, I always say that's, first and foremost, it's, those values, there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle with career decision making, but values is a huge one. So any comments or questions on that that people want to ask before we move on to some of the other areas here? Let's see, I'll go down and see if there's one new message here. Yeah, security, challenge myself, great. Maintain relationships multiple times, yes, exactly. So let's go ahead and we'll continue. And if you have other questions, you can certainly drop them in the chat box at any time. And we'll take some at the end as well, additional ones. So let's just go here. I love this quote and this image. Passion gives you the energy you need to move towards success, right? It's not easy to to make these big life changes and to move toward like trying to achieve and maintain and grow a successful career, right? So if you put passion, and it goes with your values, right? You have your values, what's important to you, and then passion, what lights you up, what is it that gets you out of bed in the morning, right? If you can tie those areas as much as possible to your career, you are that's a golden ticket, right? If you are deeply passionate about what you're doing in your career, you're going to get up in the morning feeling better about and energized and eager for that day. Not to say that you won't have bad days here and there and things that happen that aren't fun to deal with, but that passion can really help fuel your continued motivation and success in that area. um so when you think about what do I want to do with my life, you a couple things. I have a couple points here that I wanted to make. Largely, at least, gone are the days of my grandparents' generation where they had one job, right? Or even one career their entire life, right? They started working in that and they ended their lives retiring in that same either job or field, at least, right? You rarely see that. On occasion you may still see it, but it's very, very rare. Much more likely today is that people have they have many different jobs and multiple careers. I actually don't know the latest stat of how many careers, different distinct careers people have, and there's different ways of measuring it, of course. But I remember hearing, and this was years ago, but it was that the average person would have 7 different careers, not jobs, careers. Like, so that's pretty amazing, right? In a way, I think that's a great thing in a way because it allows people to not be stuck, if you will, in one area. Because I mean, our predecessors, I think of my grandfather, he worked in the mine, the gravel, like whatever rock quarry area and mines his whole life. And was it because he was just passionate about that and he really, I mean, that's what got him up in the morning? No, it was, I mean, he was a very good worker and very dedicated, but it was very much of a, this is my job, I'm proud of it, I'm going to do as well as I can, do a great job, it feeds my family. And that was just the mentality. Now there's a lot more thought of, okay, what fulfills you, and how can you and finding that fulfillment is going to help enhance your career. So I think that's really important as well. I always tell people to don't should on yourself. A lot of people get into the guilt or aspect of like, what should I do? Well, I mean, I went to school for accounting, my parents spend a lot of money, or or I got a law degree and I'm guilty of, people will think less of me if I don't do law. I mean, there's just so many areas that people people worry more about the expectations of others versus their own like fulfillment. And I know it's hard, and there's I don't know all of the situations that are out there and the complexities within these aspects of feeling guilty and all of that kind of thing. But what I do know is if you continually should on yourself and you keep yourself in a career that you are only in because of guilt and expectations of others, and what's probably going to happen is over the long haul that's going to take a toll on you and your own ability to really even feel alive and passionate and all of that. And it's not worth it. I truly think you want to move toward, as you can, towards something that's going to give you more fulfillment. Now, I think it's an important thing to say as well at this point that let's be honest right now with the COVID-19 realities, right? this is a very different job market right now, right? You have the market that's flooded in many ways. I mean, the RPCVs alone, 7,000 people had to evacuate and come home, and you weren't even necessarily ready to do a job search. And then, oh, by the way, you're going to come home to an environment where the entire thing is askew because of social isolation, your social distancing and isolation, all of those kinds of things. Some companies aren't hiring, maybe we're, letting go. But there are still jobs out there, but there is a lot of, there is certainly competition, right? And it may not be that you can't, right now is probably not the ideal time in your life, or a time in your life that you're able to say, you may not be able to say, this is what I'm passionate about. So I'm gonna not take that job that I was offered. I'm not as passionate about it, because I'm gonna wait for this one. That may not be possible right now, right? You do need to factor in those decisions of, stability, and you're paying the rent, and how long you can afford to do that, and what kind of other support you have. So you may not be able to take the job that is your ultimate, what you really want right now, right? And that's okay. Taking the other job, if you were to take a job, if you decide you need to, and you do that, obviously I would recommend you do a great job, work as hard as you can, and continue to do your networking and doing all those other things to get in touch. You can do so much of that virtually, connecting with people, and and volunteering as you can, if there's opportunities to make those other connections, and you can move toward that. So you can also work on your skill set that's needed to be even more competitive in whatever area you're looking to go for long term. So I hope that helps as well. But I just want to really end this slide with, just really finding your passion, or identifying it, and then pursuing it, or trying to work it in as much as possible, is oftentimes the best recipe for, feeling satisfaction in your job. Okay. Any questions on that? Let's see. Oh yeah, there's one right here. Great. Marissa is asking, what are the first steps of getting out of a career you're not passionate about? I know the characteristics I want in my next job, but not the field, which is making my job such a challenge. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're going to talk about that actually. I'll point you to, it sounds like you kind of know the types of and the characteristics, but finding those jobs that meet that, and exploring some of those and what they mean. And there's a lot of resources out there from, as I was mentioning, BLS and DOL, Department of Labor, and all of that. So we'll also touch on those. Thank you for the question. So there's many career aptitude assessments. I mean, I only wrote down a fraction of what's out there, and I'm focusing more on the free ones. There are, like, the Myers-Briggs type indicator I did put on here. That one does, the traditional one has a charge, and I forget how much it is, but it's a very good one. But there is the more free versions, that can point you to the same type of thing. So if you do in your search free career aptitude assessments, you're going to get a ton of things. But one of the sources that I put right here, this graphic, and is from the Balanced Careers. They did a really good article on all of these different career aptitude assessments, and I think there were like 20 that they showed, and each one they described, how does it help, what does it focus on, and how, a link to it. So it just makes it super easy for you to explore and see what works. Many of you may have done some of these. The Keirsey temperament sorter is a very good one, and a free one. Career Explorer I have on here. ONET interest profile, that is one that I'm going to talk about in a minute. ONET and some of the career one-stop resources, but there are so many others. And I wanted to ask, have any of you taken any kind of a career aptitude assessment? And if so, just jot the name of it in the chat box. That could be helpful to others, and or myself. There's so many out there. There might be some that I'm not as familiar with as well. So a lot of times your universities have these. So one thing that you actually can do, if you tap back into your universities, some of the universities allow you to access their career services for either a set period of time. Some of them have limits, like a year or whatever, but some of them don't have a limit. It's like a lifetime type of thing that you're able to. So you could certainly tap in and say, hey, do you guys have any of the free, their career assessments that they might pay for? They could, you might be able to take free through them. So So that can be good. Great. There's some good stuff. Gallup Strengths is great. Oh, absolutely. Strengthsfinder. That's a really good one, Katie. Thank you. Clifton Strengthsfinder. Yep. Both of the right. Both of those are excellent. Let's see. Clifton. Yeah. The Clifton Strengthsfinder is not free. There's a book that they have that I know sometimes, or it used to, they would have a code in it where if you bought the book, you had access to taking it. But you could certainly, I bet you, if you did a search online, free version of StrengthsFinder, I know that you would find, I mean, there are, I know some of these are equate to that. So yeah, so excellent. Good. There's some good ones coming in the chat box. Good time to remind all of you that what you might want to do before you leave this session, download the chat box, because that's going to give you then it'll download all these comments, and it'll help you to be able to maybe pursue and follow up on some of those things. So you can do that really easily by just going to the your participants, and then at the bottom you have the little 3 dots with the little square around it. You click on that, and the very, I think, first one says, or one of them says, download chat, and it'll download it onto your folder that when Zoom was installed. If you're dealing with a laptop, it'll go into that folder. Not sure on the phone aspect, but it helps you to save that, so you might want to do that. Okay. Great. Let's see. So yes, there are so many out there, and like I said, go to this article that I'm saying there. This that's take a picture of the screen if you want, and go to that one. I think you'll find some really good information there. So Career One Stop is Department of Labor is they do actually a lot of work in trying to help people with like careers, right? I mean, they compile so many statistics on different occupations and all of this, and so you look at the top here, Career One Stop. It's your kind of one-stop place for if you want to explore different careers. If you have a job title and you're like, I don't know what that would mean. What does that mean? What do they do? But also for training and for jobs. So your job search and all of that. So when I just have a screenshot here of their self-assessments area, because they talk about self-assessments versus inventories and all of that, but how can it help, right? So learning about fits, good career fits for you, but also identifying, okay, so I say I want to move into a program manager, whatever role, what are the skills that I'm going to need to do? Oh, getting the PMP, the project management, professional certification, or whatever, that acronym is there. So things like that, they can help with, these are things that could increase your competitiveness in the field or help you, do better in that kind of role. So that's great. And then the assessments also, a lot of times you're identifying, like with the one that we did, you were identifying your skill, your values. But oftentimes, the assessments they help you identify your skills that then you can look at, okay, my skills are like this. Oh, so in these occupations, the skills that people who are successful and who enjoy the career, these are the different kinds of skills they bring or they have or whatever. And even values, that kind of thing. It can really help you find that best fit, if you will. So I just really, I'm an advocate of using that as well. So and there's there's lots of good free resources that are out there. Okay. So let's go on, and then we'll ask additional, if there's any additional questions, please continue to put them in the chat box. I really appreciate that. And oh, here we go. Stu has a question. Do you have any suggestions for finding different kinds of career options? Perhaps some more obscure ones. Okay. Do you have, Stu, an example of I just want to know, do you have some kind of an occupation or an idea of one? You're saying like an obscure, you want to find out more about one and you don't know very much about it, or you want help in identifying what might be options that you haven't even thought of? So if you can put that in the chat box, I'll be happy to continue to answer that question. But I will point you to the resources that are there on the various, once you do find some of those obscure kind of, maybe you hear of a job and you have no idea what it even means, this can be very helpful. The Occupational Outlook Handbook and all of that can really help, can help as well. This is the next resource that I wanted to talk about anyway. So in addition, here we were just talking about Career One Stop, right? But here, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, they have their Occupational Outlook Handbook. What's really cool about this is, I mean, they have, well, it looks like it's 808 entries right now that are in here. But they'll have like the occupation or kind of, whatever listed, everything from actors to, whatever. But then they show you, entry level education, what's the level? Like you could put your own in, like I have masters. So if you want to look at the occupations that require a master's, or, what are the ones that have on job training? And, so it gives you, I think, as you can see, a better and an idea of, I mean, they're the ones that monitor where is job growth taking place, where is it falling, all of that. So you can get a sense of what is the projected growth rate in this area. I might be really interested in it, but if it's an area that's like dying out, that's probably not one that might be as beneficial to explore as much, right? So you can get a lot more of those kinds of things. Okay, Stu added to his question here, I'm hoping to find some things I haven't even thought of. Yeah, no, that's great. I think you will find some of those things in a variety of ways when you do some of these values and your tests, some of the assessments, right? Your aptitude assessments and all of that. Part of what comes out from those is oftentimes a suggestion of either occupation, occupational fields, specific job titles, whatever, that people who scored similarly to you reported satisfaction in these kinds of careers. So that should open up some new ones that you haven't even thought of. So that's almost sure to happen when you do some of these different different assessments and stuff. And then you taking those and researching those more on your own, trying to maybe, mine some of your contacts, and, whether that's, whether you're using Facebook or, LinkedIn or whatever, but, you might on a personal level, if you are using Facebook, connecting with friends, say, hey, does anyone know anyone who works in the block, whatever it is, who, I came across this kind of, I'm just wanting to know a little more about what that career even consists of. You would be amazed with the 6 degrees of separation, right? How big your network gets. So those are a couple of things that I would say. I mean, some people will peruse through the occupational the Occupational Outlook Handbook and literally look at the occupations, like it's A through Z. So they'll just go through and see if there are any random ones that might like pique their interest. And I would certainly say you could do that as well to get more of an idea, but just be open to when you hear about different things too, and things that come out. Now, the one thing that I always want to recommend, that your question just reminds me of, sometimes we used to use, I'm forgetting the title of it now, but it was through the Career Center in Peace Corps headquarters. It was one that we paid for. And it was a like self-assessment type of, software, whatever, that people would use. And it would spit out in the end, like, here's people who reported satisfaction, or these kinds of, characteristics similar to yours, reported satisfaction in XYZ, and they have all these things that would come out, right? And sometimes people would come to me and they'd say, yeah, I did that assessment, but you know what? One of the things that came out was, and I mean, just as an example, and nothing at all against, garbage collector or trash, whatever, whatever. And they're like, and that's not exactly what I'm, looking to do, whatever. But what I would say to them is, okay, just because something comes up does not obligate you to pursue it. It could be a random one that's on there because they just so happen to have this kind of interest, and you have this kind of whatever, and they just so happen, there several people were doing that. It could be that, you might have gotten that showing up because you wanted a job that was outdoors. You didn't want an at the desk kind of job. You wanted to be out, in nature, whatever, like environmental, those kind of things. So it could have come up for a variety of reasons. So I always say, people, don't throw out the entire result because of one that comes out, that seems askew. I hope that helps. Okay, great. I'm looking at the time here. My goodness, time flies. 12:05. I'm going to actually go to the next slide, which is our Q&A. So literally at this point, we have 5 minutes or longer. I can certainly stay on, but I know people have other things to do as well, and I don't want to obligate you to do so. So are there any other questions that people have at this point? for me, put them in the chat box and I'm happy to answer them. Or again, I think we're a small enough group that we could have you unmute. I think we're under 30 now. So, we're 32, that's fine. So you could certainly unmute and ask your question or put it in the chat box. I'm totally fine to either. Let's see here. While we're waiting for questions, I am going to drop into the chat box the direct email, or the email for if you have questions, follow-up questions, things like that. It's just the Peace Corps Connect .org. That's our address there, the careers one that you can use. I'm just putting this in here so you all have it, okay? Anyone have questions? Okay, we've got one here. Best places to post resumes besides LinkedIn. Oh gosh, I would open this up to, the job seekers that are doing yours right now, where you found more, where you found more success. But I do know, for example, if you many of the job search areas like, USA Jobs, you can have your career, you can have your resumes be searchable. I would say on any of the job boards that you're going to, if they have the option to have your resume be searchable, and it's a source that you think is it's, maybe in the field that you're interested in, or federal government or whatever, where it would be beneficial, I would absolutely choose that, make it searchable then, if you're doing that job search. So let's see, Idealist, oh, absolutely. Idealist, indeed. Those are two of the biggest players. ZipRecruiter, yep. Hillary, that's another good one. There's so many out there. It really depends on how much, you want to be contacted as well. I guess my question for you all, Marissa, Katie, and Hillary, and anyone else who's made yours searchable on any of these search engines, what kind of traffic have you seen from that? Do you feel like they use it a lot? Do you feel like you've been contacted? So much of it, of course, depends also on what your resume is and your interest area and all of that. But have you had gotten traction on any of those? You can either drop it in the chat box or unmute yourself to share. I'm totally fine to either. Okay, Hillary shared, I've been getting emails with new job listings from Indeed that have been pretty good. Great. Yeah, it can somewhat help you help them tailor the jobs that are most in your area of interest, which let's face it, anything that you can have done that's going to help you get a more sussed down version and not have to weed through all of those jobs that you're not interested in at all is not a bad thing. So that's great. All right. Oh, and I see another question came in here a little bit up. Let me try to address this one as well. Would taking temporary positions not to exceed 13 months and hopping around positions look badly? Emily, right now, I think that actually could be a great idea. If you got a long-term temp position, not to exceed 13 months, that would give you some more time to be exploring maybe what your long-term interest is, or, and while making money and having a little more stability of, at least, it's not like a day-to-day temp, it's, like this long-term, or whatever, not to exceed, that could be actually, I think, a really great thing. I do not think anyone is going to look, first of all, they're not going to look poorly on you not working right now during this time. It's COVID-19. This is a global pandemic. Nobody is going to forget this, right? So when they say, oh, what have they been doing since March of this year? There's this gap, no. And even if it takes you, longer to get that, but I would absolutely say pursuing, that option, if it's something that you think would be a good experience, would be just fine. And companies are not going to be, and in this case, it's a temporary position. So it's not like you even took a position and then left, left right away. It's not that. It's more it is a temporary position. And so, they know as such that you're going to need to be and should be looking for your long term. Okay. Great. Let's see here. We do have, I think I'll take one more question here and then we'll go ahead, or let's see, one more question and then we can certainly end the recording, and then I can continue with any additional questions as well if people have it. Any tips on if you narrow down to a few types of jobs or job fields you feel you really feel passionate about and just can't figure out how to choose between them? For example, oh, this is good. Thank you for putting the example, because that's what I was going to ask you. I'm really passionate about psychology and also international development. I struggle on which to pursue. Well, the good news for you is chances are in your life, you are going to have the opportunity to pursue both of those. So it may come down to more of a what makes more sense initially, the psychology or the international development. Now, it may lead ultimately to a position where you're doing maybe more of that social services type of work in the international realm, but you could start with really either. And I would say, look at what the jobs are. What are the jobs that are more available, right? And start maybe with that, and then also always looking at what are the other kinds of opportunities that exist. You're going to be changing jobs. That's just a fact of life, right? So so I think they're both wins, I guess is what I would say. Whatever, they both speak to you. So you're not going to make a wrong decision if you're going with two options. You're choosing from two options that you're passionate about, right? Okay, and then let's see, Kelly. Okay, so I will answer one more question here, I know, and then people, I totally understand, folks, if you need to drop off whenever you want, you certainly can. We have a question here I do want to answer. Is it better to apply for jobs near me, even though the job market locally is pretty dry, or attempt to apply for entry-level jobs in another state? Are hiring managers willing to take the risk on you moving for a job right now? Yeah. Well, the truth of the matter is right now, most jobs are remote. So whether you're in, Hawaii or Washington, D.C. or anywhere in between, you could do that. But certainly a lot of jobs are eventually looking to have you be local to wherever they are. I think I would probably still be pursuing both, right? Just to see what comes in first, but there's nothing wrong with doing a long distance job search. And there are some things that you can do that help make that less obvious that you're a long distance applicant. For example, you don't have to put on your resume these days, on a standard resume, you don't have to put your mailing address, right? Now, if you live in or around the area, definitely put it on, or at least the city and state, so that it shows that you're local. That's a great thing. But if you're not local, you could just have your, your contact email, your phone number, your LinkedIn profile, whatever. And honestly, don't worry about your phone number not being local. Most people don't even change theirs, even when they do live in a different area, move to a different area. So you could do that to kind of be a little more under the radar. But I would also be prepared for when they do, interview you, are you, why are you interested, or what brings you, to want to consider a job in this area, and you're going to want to come up with your response of, to me the most important thing is finding a job that I'm passionate about in the area of and I'm very flexible, as proven in my Peace Corps service, where I was selected to go to wherever, and so I'm very, very open to relocating. So something like that, where you're going to make that case, if that makes sense. Okay. And yep, and then Hillary shares, I know several people who've recently moved to start a new job, so that's definitely still happening. But most things, yep, I've been seeing are remote, at least for now. Yep, exactly, good point. All right, so please, if you do have additional questions, I'm happy to answer those. I can stay on for a little bit here, but I think I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. And so that folks who do need to leave can certainly leave at their, at their leisure. Please do remember to download the chat box if you're interested, so that in any of the information that's been shared in the chat box, you can do that by just going to the bottom right of the participant screen, where it shows the box with the, with the 3 dots in it, and just click on that to download chat. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today. And as always, it's a pleasure to be here, and we'll look forward to you hopefully in our future events. We're going to talk about, I think it's informational interviewing on Monday. So on Monday night at 8 p.m. So if you're interested in that one, check out our events calendar at peacecorpsconnect.org/events and register for any that you're interested in. We just finalized our September offerings. Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.